Hey everybody, you want to see some bullshit? You want to see some bullshit? It's right behind me. Yeah, you're gonna love this crap. It's gonna be amazing. Ladies and gentlemen, first off, welcome to the lovely video. I'm glad you are here on my channel checking this shit out. We're gonna talk about some bullshit, and this is absolute bullshit. If you haven't guessed by the title, if you have not guessed by the title, yes, it's bullshit all around. And let's get into it. Oh, also, I'm turning off the comments because I know how some gamers are when it comes to cosmetic items and loot boxes. I don't want to hear that bullshit, okay? I don't want you taking away from the narrative, so suck it up and deal, all right? But for those of you that understand this concept and understand the assignment, thank you and enjoy the video. So, this came down the pipe on the 25th, a couple of days ago. And the title kind of tells you the amount of bullshit that people will just try to bring down the pipe because, hey, they don't want to take responsibility for one, and hey, I'm a cheap bastard and I want everything for free, so fuck you. Um, this is what that is. So here we go. Also, it's under gambling from ELN, which I've never heard of before, but it's something that caught my attention. Major gaming companies face lawsuit over predatory monetization and addictive practices. The reason why I'm using quotes like that is because predatory monetization and addictive practices is what companies do deceptively. They do it secretly. That's the whole thing. And I'll get into why in just a minute, why I say that. Right now, let's just read this article, shall we? Let's enjoy this lovely little chestnut of crap. Several of the gaming industry's most prominent companies, including Blizzard, EA, Epic Games, Ubisoft, Google, Apple, and Steam, are facing a lawsuit over allegations of predatory monetization and the implementation of purposefully addictive practices in their games. The lawsuit, filed by Casey Dunn on behalf of his 13-year-old child. As soon as I read this part, I'm just going to stop here for a second. As soon as I read that part, I knew this was bullshit. Okay? Absolute bullshit. And if you're paying attention to this stuff, you'll know that this is bullshit too. Oh yeah. Marks a significant escalation in the ongoing debate surrounding the ethics of in-game purchases and the psychological impact of video games on minors. Yes, because that debate came to a sudden stop and never really got picked up because, we had a little thing known as the pandemic. COVID-19 hit, and people decided, I'm just going to stay home and play these games that I think suck, only then to realize, hey, these games are not that type of thing, but yet we have people who are still going ahead and saying it is. So there's that. And I also like to pay attention to this picture. Tell me this isn't AI. I mean, can we just with this? You got the game over here in the corner, and he's over here looking like, I have a problem. Help me, please. Help me. Oh no. This is totally AI, by the way. Don't ask me how I know, I just know. But goddamn, I mean, come on, man. The core of the lawsuit, or as I like to call it, the core of bullshit. The complaint centers around the claim that Dunn's minor child has developed an addiction to popular games like Fortnite, Rainbow Six, Battlefield, and Call of Duty. No. First and foremost, these games are not for 13-year-olds. They're not. All right, Fortnite is rated T for teen. Rainbow Six Siege, I believe, is rated M for mature. Battlefield and Call of Duty, I definitely know are rated M for mature because there's blood, there's violence. You get killed pretty nasty in those games, especially COD. Okay, these games aren't for 13-year-olds. They're for grown-ups. They're catered towards grown-ups, which is why this lawsuit is bullshit. Okay, this addiction, according to the lawsuit, has led to mental anguish, financial loss, and a host of other damages. It's amazing how mental anguish and financial loss are the primary two, but they can't seem to tell us the rest. The crux of the lawsuit is the accusation that these gaming companies have been engaging in predatory practices targeting minors with little regulatory oversight. The ESRB exists for this particular reason, to prevent targeting minors. Okay? These games that are being mentioned, the 4 games that are being mentioned, are catered towards teenagers. That's 16 and up. Rated M for mature is for adults, 18 and up. They're not for kids. The ESRB says they're not for kids. The international rating system that we have, I can't remember its exact name, also says they're not for kids. The whole point of the ESRB and the international rating system, oh, I remember it now, IARC, there it is. These rating systems exist to help guide consumers as to what type of game is for what particular age group dynamic. Fortnite is not for 13-year-olds. Rainbow Six is not for 13-year-olds. Battlefield is definitely not for 13-year-olds. Call of Duty is so not for 13-year-olds. These are for teenagers and up. 16, 18, and beyond. They're not for 13-year-olds. The rating system goes E10, which is everyone 10 and up. And then there's everyone, which is general audience, right? And then you have T for teen, which is 14 to 17. And then you have M for mature. And even then, these games do have in-game purchases. But who's responsible for those in-game purchases? It's not the gamers, it's not the gaming industry. No, it's this kid. His father, his parents are responsible for those purchases. That's their internet. That is their computer. That's their money he's using to make these purchases. 13-year-olds not supposed to be playing these games. They're not. It's the fault of the parents. That's why this lawsuit's not going to go anywhere. And if it does, wow, that just means people are really stupid about gaming in general, which was really sad because damn. I mean, seriously, you're saying that the companies have been engaging in predatory practices targeting minors, but yet they have games that are rated for grown-ups. What? You want to talk about a game that targets minors in all the bad ways? Roblox. A lot of stories come down the pipe from Roblox. Okay? There was grooming involved. There was illegal financial practices. There was at a time some really adult stuff going on in there. Like, what, a sex dungeon was even talked about being made in Roblox. Yeah, Roblox has had its share of controversy, and that is a game that is earmarked towards kids, but we don't talk about that. Oh, what? Roblox? That's for kids. Nobody cares about that. I'm talking about Fortnite and Rainbow Six and Battlefield and Call of Duty and PUBG and Apex Legends. These games are targeting minors, and it's what? What's that? Oh, Roblox had people that were targeting minors? It's a kid's game. Don't worry about it. We'll just block it or something. But we need to talk about these serious games that are cared for adults going after our kids. That's the argument right now. Don't focus on the actual problem, but go ahead and focus on the games that aren't the problem instead. And just doing this giant lawsuit. Beyond content, the focus on practices. Traditionally, a little side note here, the video game industry does not do tradition. The word tradition and traditionally do not exist in the vocabulary. You don't believe me? Look at the current video game landscape right now. Look at where it was 3 years ago. Look where it is now. They don't do tradition. Video game regulation has revolved around content, as guided by the ESRB and the IARC, which is surprisingly not mentioned. However, this lawsuit challenges the practices behind the content, particularly focusing on in-game purchases and the alleged use of addictive tactics to prolong player engagement and spending. The plaintiff argues that these practices are not only harmful, but are specifically designed to exploit the vulnerabilities of minors. The games are not designed to be played by minors, because the games aren't made for kids. Because the ESRB and the IARC say so. You can't take a game that's catered directly to adults, say, hey kids, buy this. This is not Philip Morris. Alright, this is not Philip Morris. Okay, it's a fucking video game. It has its rating. We know what it's for. As someone who has played these games, and I played all 4 of these games, I can tell you for a fact, I know that these games are not for kids. Kids should not be playing Fortnite. A 13-year-old kind of might play Fortnite, but shouldn't. Wait until you're actually of age to actually play these games. I know for a fact no 13-year-old should be playing fucking Call of Duty. None of them. OG and current. Those games are definitely not for kids. But yet here we are. You have adults that aren't paying attention to the ESRB, the IARC, just buying the games for their children and just not paying attention to what their children are doing online. And we end up with bullshit lawsuits like this. And this lawsuit is bullshit. The role of platforms and data mining. Oh, I'm going to love this one. An interesting facet of this lawsuit is the inclusion of platform providers like Google, Apple, and Steam. These platforms, which benefit financially from in-game purchases, are accused of being complicit in these predatory practices. They're not predatory practices. Additionally, the lawsuit raises concerns about games linked to social media accounts, alleging that this integration is used to mine data and target players more effectively, exacerbating the issue of unregulated spending, especially among minors. So much bullshit is in that one paragraph that the meter that measures bullshit broke. And we can't even fix it because our economy is ass. The whole point of social media accounts being connected to your main account is if you don't know or forget your password to your account. Those serve as alternatives so you can log in and access your account. Everyone knows this. But they'll use it as like, oh, hey, he's on Twitter. We're going to have this integration come together, and then we can go ahead and do this thing, and then they can connect and stuff, and that will get more kids onto the site. That's not how that works. That's not how that works. A fucking 13-year-old cannot walk into any store or any physical establishment and say, hey, I want the most violent game you've got. I'm 13. Give it to me, please. They're not going to do that. They're not going to do that. They're not supposed to do that. This is not a thing that happens. Linked to social media accounts alleging that this integration is used to mine data and target players more effectively. So what they're saying is that they're using this data target players in games that they purchased to make these purchases. So the miners buy the games, which they're not supposed to do and can't do, and then they connect their social media accounts to these games that they've already purchased, which then takes information from those accounts to target them more about the game that was purchased either for them or that they already purchased themselves, to then go to unregulated spending of buying cosmetic items in a game that isn't designed for them in the first place. If any of that makes sense to you, please sit down and shut the fuck up, because you're trying really hard to connect dots that don't even exist. And you might be on drugs. A new angle on an old problem. Yes, a new angle or spin on the problem of saying, hey, video games are a reason why kids are fucked up these days, when it's not. While the gaming industry has faced legal challenges before, particularly regarding loot boxes, which that was also bullshit, this lawsuit takes a broader approach. It targets the underlying practices that make such monetization strategies enticing and addictive. No, it doesn't. This approach could potentially open a new front in the battle against what many see as exploitative practices in the gaming industry, which is a fancy way of saying, I'm a cheap bastard and I don't want to spend all this money on this stuff, so I'm going to go along with this lawsuit and say, hey, yeah, this is a thing that's actually happening and we need to take care of it. Won't somebody think of the children? Won't somebody think of the children? Finally, I get to spend less money on things. That's what this is. So many people agree with this shit because they don't want to spend money to buy these items. There's this huge thing that went on where it's like, hey, all this stuff is in the game already. Just give it to me right off the bat so I don't have to buy extra. It's the single player concept. Multiplayer online games require these purchases so that way you have the servers for upkeep, because eventually sales are going to wind down eventually on these games. It's going to happen. So you have to find another revenue stream to keep stuff going. Look at World of Warcraft. You buy World of Warcraft one time. That's it. That's good. But you have to have a subscription. You have to buy time on the server in order to play on the server. You run out of time, you can't play anymore. The game's still yours, but you still have to buy more time to be on the server. This has been something that has been going on with World of Warcraft for decades. It's not like they suddenly came up with it. This has been the business model for World of Warcraft for decades. I find it interesting that that game is nowhere on the list. I find it interesting that games like Hearthstone, which is a card game which has in-game purchases, is not on the list. I find it fascinating that League of Legends, which is notoriously known for its in-game purchases, is not on the list. I find it amazing that Magic the fucking Gathering, not the digital version, the paper Magic, is not on this list. But no. These games have in-game purchases. Destiny 2, yes, I know, a lot of people still play that game and a lot of people don't. It has in-game purchases. Nowhere on the list. There are actually games that have been around for decades that use this exact same business model to keep the game going, to keep the servers running, so that way you can still have them 10, 20 years down the road. These games aren't mentioned at all. And these games, in a way, do use loot boxes. They're just in a different form. They're not actually boxes. They can be skins, they can be little packets or little packets of cards. They can be little orbs or spheres. They can be rectangular boxes or triangles or pyramids. Or special orbs that have to be pierced and punctured. Those games are nowhere on there. League of Legends, which is known for that. No, it's not on here. World of Warcraft, no, it doesn't do it. No way does it do that. But yet, these games, Call of Duty, Battlefield, fucking Fortnite, these are on the list. Wow. Implications for the industry. The lawsuit is more than a legal battle. It's a spotlight on the ethical considerations of game design and monetization, which is bullshit. It's absolute bullshit. You want to know how it's absolute bullshit? Because a lot of gamers, and I can tell you this right now, because I've been on a lot of Discords that are dedicated to some games that I play, and they've talked about their monetization system, and they've been very open about it, and they've been very honest about it. And you will have people to this day still come in and say, oh, it's predatory. Oh, you just want to, it's a cash grab. It's this, it's that, it's this, it's this. You shouldn't get this. This game is terrible because it has this. Oh, you have to buy the cosmetics? You gotta get this? You gotta buy that? No. It's been like this for the longest time, and this is the side that they don't tell you about. There are gamers who just don't want to buy the cosmetic items and will instead bitch and fuss and review bomb a game to such an extent that in the hopes of putting so much pressure on the developers that they'll finally say, okay, we give up, here you go. We're going to just give it to you for free, forget what we did. And we don't even use loot boxes anymore. We now have battle passes. And even then, people are complaining about it. Before, with the loot boxes, it was, hey, randomness, it's gambling, it's this, we don't get to see what we might get. Now we have battle passes. And people are still complaining about battle passes because now it's changed. Where loot boxes were supposedly a form of gambling, they weren't. We now have battle passes, which are now apparently super addictive because you can now see what you can have, and it's all bright and shiny. You see what you get now for X amount of dollars or in-game currency. But now it's so addictive. It's addictive. You can't, oh no, we can't have this now. The same shit's carrying over and over again. They didn't like loot boxes, so they got rid of them. They replaced them with battle passes, so now you can see what you're getting. And yet now it's addictive. Even more so because you can see it. So what was the point in complaining in the first place if the second thing that you had is also going to be just as bad? People are just really fucking cheap. There are gamers who are super cheap bastards. And they will cling on to these type of lawsuits. They will support these type of lawsuits. They will say, yes, I'm in favor of this because, you know, kids, the children and stuff. Won't somebody think of the children? Won't somebody think of the predatory monetization and Nobody gives a fuck about their children. Nobody gives a fuck about these kids. Content creators, gaming developers, and the like, unless they are making a game specifically tailored to children, developers don't give a shit, and neither do gamers. You have gamers who understand the concept of cosmetic items. You have gamers who understand the purchases and how it is important to make these purchases, how it can help with the game and keeping it thriving and going forward. You have all of that. And then you have these bullshit articles that dump down your neck and try to make you feel guilty and make you feel like this is a huge oncoming problem. Because I've heard this story before. There was a regulatory commission in the UK before COVID-19 started talking about the addictiveness of these games. And these are the games that it actually mentioned. So either this article is bullshit, or, well, it is anyways, or this is an actual article and it's not bullshit because there's a case and everything. They filed it. They're just repeating the same shit over and over again. My 13-year-old son is addicted to these games that I bought him. And he's been making in-game purchases with money that he has access to. Because I don't know how to secure my own stuff. And he's just addicted and he's buying all this stuff. And he's buying all of it and he tells me he can't stop. And because he can't stop with these things, it's ruining his life. It's ruining his ability to study and pay attention to girls or boys, however he rolls. And it's just this terrible, horrible mess. Won't somebody think of my child? They're predatory bastards. The predatory monetization, they're going after our children. They're attacking our children. Won't somebody think of the children? We need regulation that stops this. That stops these purchases and sales. Tiniest violin, ladies and gentlemen. This is all bullshit. This has nothing to do with children. It's got nothing to do with addictiveness. These are all buzzwords that are being used. These type of lawsuits really aren't going to go anywhere, just like all that other shit didn't go anywhere. There's nothing wrong with a company having in-game purchases, optional in-game purchases, mind you, to keep their own game running. There's nothing wrong with that. You can go on sales alone, that's great, but eventually sales are going to dwindle down, they're going to die off. What are you going to do? What's the alternative to that? The alternative to that would most likely probably be ads. Do you want ads in your video games? These are online games. That means there are servers running. Servers which are not free. You have to pay for the bandwidth, you have to pay for the maintenance, you have to pay for the upkeep, you have to pay the people who actually maintain these services. So, where's that money going to come from? Some people will be like, I don't know, it's not my problem. As long as we don't have to pay for this, I'm fine. I know those type of gamers because I've seen those type of gamers. I have talked to those type of gamers. This is a bullshit lawsuit. This lawsuit basically in a nutshell says, I wasn't paying attention to what my son was doing with my credit card, and he went fast and loose. I didn't set boundaries. I didn't set restrictions. He went fast and loose with the card, and instead of blaming him, or more effectively, myself, as to why he's turning out like this, I'm going to blame the entire gaming industry for predatory monetization. They were knowingly and intentionally making these games so addictive to kids and going after their money, which is actually my money, and that's my son in my house with my computer and the games that I purchased for him with my internet connection. It is not the fault of the gaming industry that you have kids playing fast and loose with parents' credit cards and making purchases. It's not. None of these companies are responsible for any of this shit. None of these companies. Blizzard, EA, Epic, Ubisoft, Google, Apple, and Steam are not responsible for why a parent is not keeping track of the purchases and the actions their kid is doing online under their roof. It's a bullshit lawsuit because the parent doesn't want to admit, hey, I'm really not that good at watching my kid. I'm really not. And I should acknowledge that. I should admit it. I should accept it. Instead of just trying to blame people for it. I should just accept that I suck. And it sucks to suck. Which is probably why he doesn't want to admit it. If you got a kid and your kid has access to the internet, remember two things. One, the internet's not for kids. There is like a grain of sand in content catered to kids that exists online. Everything else is catered towards grown-ups. Why? Because grown-ups have money. And they cater to the interests of grown-ups to get that money from the grown-ups so they can continue to make more content for the grown-ups. The internet's always been adults only. Plain and simple, dyed in the wool. That's never going to change, no matter how many lawsuits you file, no matter how many times you scream, won't somebody think of the children? That's not a thing that happens. And if you really don't want to pay for cosmetic items, fine. You could. There's okay with being. There's nothing wrong with being frugal, okay? But there is something wrong with being a super cheap bastard, just trying to prey on the emotional instabilities, insecurities, and sheer neglect of someone who can't look at their kid and say, "No, you're not buying that. You're underage." It's not anyone's fault but the parents. If this 13-year-old is really suffering from issues, which I really doubt that because he's 13, he doesn't even know half this shit and he probably doesn't even care. It's probably just like, oh, my parents said it, so I'm just going to go along with it. And yeah, I am aware about addiction. I know that addiction can be just a horrible thing. It's easy to become addicted to anything, but not everything is addictive. Rational thinking needs to come into play here. It is no one's fault online. It's not the player's fault. It's not your fault. It's not the gaming industry's fault. It's a parent who just wasn't paying attention to what his son was doing online. Buying games for his son that he was too young to play. Giving him access to making purchases online, playing fast and loose. He shouldn't have did that. It's his problem and his fault. It is not the gaming industry's fault. It's not even my fault. It's sure as hell not yours. And I think it's really disturbing that you have people and parents and gamers talking about think of the children. You want total strangers online worrying about the safety of your kids? I mean, really think about that. Ridiculous. And in some cases, it's pitiful. I have no sympathy at all for anybody involved in this. Not the dad or the kid. This is terrible. It's disgusting. And it's just plain dumb. And if you fall for this, well, I'm not going to say you're part of the problem. What I am going to say is you'll fall for anything. Read between the lines and recognize bullshit when you see it. This is a bullshit lawsuit, and this is a bullshit article. I think we've had enough bullshit for a while, don't you agree? I'm GodOfKnockers. It was really nice talking to you. Take care, good games. Please play responsibly and purchase responsibly. All right?